Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Dev, and if you clicked on this video, you're probably interested in getting yourself a 3D printer. As you can see, I've got 4 Bambu Lab 3D printers behind me. These printers are excellent, right? I really recommend them, especially if you're getting into 3D printing for the first time. With Black Friday around the corner, it makes these printers even more attractive, right? So as you can see, I've got the A1 Mini, I've got an A1, and I've got a P1S, and I know a bit more about the other 3D printers. So if you're not sure which one you want to get, then hopefully I can give you some advice as someone that uses a 3D printer for both a hobby and someone who runs an Etsy shop that actually has some sort of level of success. It's not my full-time job, but it definitely is a side hustle that brings in, a bit of extra money. Well, another reason why I'm making this video is because I feel like people who want to get into 3D printing, sometimes they feel like they need to get the biggest, best machine out there. You need to spend a lot in your 3D printer and it's going to somehow help your sales. That is definitely not true. I'm just going to say that right off the bat. I started off with this A1 Mini. I wasn't even making use of the AMS, but through this, I actually grew my Etsy shop. And during Christmas time, the algorithm blessed me and my shop was doing so well. I actually had to end up upgrading my printers, getting a few more to actually meet the demand of Etsy. So it's a very nice problem to have, but just putting it out there. I started off with this machine when I was unemployed. And I'm saying, you don't actually have to put all your money into one of these printers. There's a lot better ways to spend your money, which I'll talk about in this video and some future videos as well. So if you guys do find this video helpful, I'd appreciate if you can leave a like, and let's get into it. Starting out, the very first printer that I recommend that anyone gets, to be honest, is an A1 Mini. Why? Because it's £140 on sale right now. That is insanely cheap. The fact that it's got a touchscreen means it's super easy to load and unload filaments, change settings that you want, calibrate your machine, with auto calibration. And one thing that I really love about the A1 Mini and the A series so far compared to the older models is the fact that they actually have a way you can easily swap the nozzles. So in case they get clogged or jammed, or in case you want to change it from a 0.4 to a 0.2, you literally just have to open the cap, pull out the nozzle, put a new one in, and you're done, right? Super easy. The A1 Mini and the A1 is also known as a Bedslinger, right? So over here you can see, you can actually pull the rails back and forth with them and move it left to right. The good thing with this is that it is super easy to maintain this, because in a few months, well, every let's say a few weeks, you need to print. You do need to lube and grease these rails, because otherwise it just helps the printer last longer and it stops it from being damaged, right? Because these are mechanically moving parts. So in order to do that with this printer, super simple. Everything in from the touchscreen to the nozzle and the maintenance, it just makes it such an easy beginner 3D printer. One downside of it, and to be honest, I don't think it's a downside, is that this build volume is about 18 centimeters cubed, right? So the width, the depth, and then the height, it's a smaller size. But so if you want to print anything bigger, you might have to go for the A1, which I'll talk about in a bit. But to be honest, I think the small size 3D printer is great, okay? Like when you're starting out, you'll be able to see what size prints you want to do, because you can see these models online for free before you even get a 3D printer. The fact that this is so small without the AMS, you can leave it in your office. That's one of the reasons why my girlfriend actually got this 3D printer specifically, the A1 Mini, because of its small, cute size. And I agree, look how big this thing is, especially the one down there below, compared to this thing, excluding the AMS. It's just such a nice small form factor. It just makes it so convenient, especially if you live in something like an apartment or you don't have that much space, or you're just not sure if you want to get one, right? £140. You can see if you're going to enjoy 3D printing. If you do, save that money and buy another 3D printer in terms of something that allows you to have a bit more, horsepower behind your design. Next up, we're going to talk about the AMS. So for those of you that don't know what an AMS is, it stands for Automatic Material System. So when you want to 3D print something, you're basically taking this spool, essentially, right? This is like the ink or the material. It melts it, and then it melts it into a design, and then, that's what kind of makes your object. When you want to do multicolor 3D printing, you need to pull this material out, and then you need to load one back in. So let's say if you want to 3D print something with multicolors, that's when you'd use an AMS. It would allow you to automatically unload the material and load a new material in without you having to manually swap them, right? So do you need an AMS? Well, if you plan on doing loads of multicolored prints, like you see all these random fidget toys and articulated animals, maybe. But equally so, it very much depends on the creator who does them, because multicolor prints, and I'll get onto this in another video, they can produce a lot of waste, all right? So people actually end up printing the parts separately to reduce the multicolor filament purge waste, and then just gluing them together, or they just design them smarter where, it's just very minimal color swapping, so you can actually just unload it at the right time instead of every layer and then just load the new material in. However, there is another use for an AMS, and that's so you can actually just store the materials there like I do. I don't do a lot of multicolor prints, but if I want to print something gold or purple or pink, I don't want to constantly have to come back into this room, unload it, load the material, and then next time unload it, load the material. I can just leave my filament in here. It's actually closed with the AMS Pro, so it does keep it dry, so it doesn't get any moisture in them. And then I have that wide selection of filament. And like I said, I don't have to constantly unload it, unload it. It is more of a luxury if you don't want to do multicolor prints. But just keep in mind, multicolor prints do actually add up to your cost quite a bit because you do end up purging quite a lot of filament. Again, something for another video, but I did want to explain what an AMS is. All right. With the AMS, it pushes the price from 140 to 250. It's actually quite a big increase, and it actually changes the form factor quite a bit, right? It's almost double in size, and it makes it look a lot more like Frankenstein, to be honest. So my opinion is, if you just want to try out 3D printing, forget the AMS for the A1 Mini, okay? This is where we're going to start moving on to the A1. The A1, as you can see down here, it has a bigger build plate. I believe it's about 25 or 28 centimeters cubed. I'm going to put the actual technical specifications on the screen here. Uses the same AMS light as the A1. It's just for the fact that you get a bigger printer for £50 more. I think they come in together for about £300, if I'm not mistaken, this Black Friday. And I'd say if you're very, search what materials you want to print. But if you want to print stuff like PLA, TPU, stuff that isn't that exotic, A1 and an AMS go hand in hand together very well. Okay, there's the fact that you can spend £50 more and you just get the bigger brother version of it essentially. Because I feel like if you want something small, you're not going to get the AMS for the A1 Mini. If you want something small, you just get the A1 Mini. If you want something that's fairly cheap and you can do multicolor printing and you can use PLA, definitely get the A1 with the AMS combo. The drawback is, and this is to both of them, it's just these are known as Bedslinger devices, right? So when I talk about a Bedslinger, you can have a CoreXY 3D printer here, which is how I first thought a 3D printer works, where you have your base plate here, and then the tool head can move back and forth, and then it can move left and right. This gives you extra stability to actually print something because your print essentially always stays in the same place. It actually only slowly moves down just to allow for the height to be printed, right? Whereas with the A1 Mini and the A1, because if you're essentially printing a very thin, tall object, when your bed's moving back and forth, it's not as stable, right? It's almost like, imagine putting a building on the ground, but the ground's moving left and right, left and right. You can use supports and you can use stuff in the software to make it stick, which I've done before, but I've just noticed for like taller prints, the P1S and the other non-slinger devices turned out to be just a bit faster, right? Otherwise, you might have to reduce your print speeds. But just so you guys know that the quality between these machines, from what I've used specifically for PLA, I couldn't tell a difference. The only difference I could tell was when you get into a lot of taller designs. So that is the A1, okay? If you know you're going to do fairly larger prints and you don't need any exotic materials, then you go between the A1 Mini and the A1. If you've noticed, these are open printers, right? The fact that they're open means that, they don't require these sort of bulky casings. That has its pros and cons. One, it's the fact that these printers overall, they are lighter and they're a lot easier to maintain. You can actually go in the rail, apply the lube and the grease straight away rather than this bulky thing. However, the downside is you actually can't print as much exotic materials. So do some research online. So personally, I actually only print in PLA. The reason for this is because it's by far the easiest material to use for beginners. When you look at FDM printers, which is what these are, most people will use PLA. You can print stuff like TPU and PETG and a few other things, which you can see on the website. Just so definitely take their recommended advice with that. If you want more exotic materials, you are going to have to get an enclosed device, something like the P1S or the X1C or the other ones that Bambu have. The whole reason for this is because those more exotic materials, they require constant temperatures. You shouldn't mess with them. Whereas here, this is very open. Whereas here, you've got a very regulated, heated environment, and that's why they're enclosed, right? And here we have the P1S that comes in at around £450 on this Black Friday sale, brand new. And that's because the P2S has just been released, which we'll get more into later. P1S, who is this for? So the P1S is essentially for anyone that's thinking about printing the more exotic materials. So I'm talking about ABS, ASA, and the other stuff that you've seen on the screen, as well as anyone that wants a CoreXY printer, so if they want a bit more stability with their prints, if they're thinking of printing larger objects, definitely taller, larger objects, they'll definitely appreciate the P1S more, all right? Now, Bambu Lab themselves actually advertise this as the workhorse of a 3D printer. So it's seen as offering like really high quality for a mid-range price. And to be honest, I completely agree with it, right? Here, as you can see, this is probably the best testimonial I can give. I've spent almost 2,000 hours printing on this device, and I've had it just under a year. And believe me when I say it prints just as good as I got it as on day one, right? So this printer really is something reliable. The reason why I got a P1S, personally, even though I print PLA, the whole reason why I got a P1S was because of the AMS Pro, right? So the A1 and the A1 Mini, which is currently gone right now because my girlfriend's borrowing it, use the AMS Lite. The cheapest printer that you could actually get that wasn't a P1P, because that's basically extinct and like an inferior version essentially. I see no reason to get it today. Was the P1S. The AMS was the deal breaker for me, right? So this AMS here, which is the AMS Pro variant, the best thing about it is the fact that it actually prints more reliably, right? You can see that it's actually pulling the filament down. This AMS, I mean, it's probably gotten stuck once or twice in my whole year of actually using it, right? To me, it's just so reliable. The AMS Lite, it doesn't really have that many problems, but occasionally when I've been using it and I've been going out, it will get stuck. So I'd have to come back and then I'd have to, just sort of reload the spool and the filament again. It's not a big deal, especially if you're going to mainly be 3D printing at home. It was just because I had to get the Etsy orders out, but it does make a difference. That is the reason why I got the P1S, because of its reliability. And another cool feature about this AMS Pro is the fact that it's enclosed, right? It actually stops moisture from getting into your filament. So that means your 3D prints are actually probably going to be printing better quality, or at least your filament's going to hold on to its quality for a while longer because it's going to stop the moisture from getting in. For those of you that don't know, if you actually have moisture in your filament, when you print it, you might get a little bit of a quality degrade because there might be a little bit of bubbling occurring when the 3D printer melts your material. You don't really want it, so this is what the AMS Pro does. It protects it, it keeps the moisture out of your filament, and overall, it just makes it a more reliable system, right? I mean, let's not talk about the fact that my AMS Pro still has the original plastic on it. I don't like taking it off. I don't know why, but I know you guys are going to slate me in the comments. When you get to stuff like the P1S, this, in my eyes, even though I don't use it for the more exotic materials, this to me just looks like a lot more of a professional 3D printer, right? Especially with the AMS sitting on top. I mean, you can see the A1 Mini here with the AMS. It looks a little bit like Frankenstein, just sort of fudged together. I mean, it is, a lot cheaper in terms of price, so you got to give it that. But here, this just seems like a lot more of a robust solution. So I think I got the P1S for £660 with the AMS Pro. Now you can get it for, I think, 450 because the P2S is out, which I'll talk about in a bit. But yes, as you guys are very lucky, you can get it for two-thirds the price that I bought it for. To me, it's if you are making money with 3D printing, the P1S over the A series makes more sense. However, I do have to say, when I am not fully 3D printing for my business, when demand is low, I actually do personally prefer printing on the A series, which is what I'll talk about now in a bit, because there are some downsides with the P1S printer. And like I said, there is actually benefits of getting the A series model. Is this one is actually hard to maintain, in my opinion, right? With a CoreXY printer, you actually have to lube and grease all these individual rods, as well as a more complicated gantry, which I don't like. The thing that pushes it back and forth and left and right. It's a lot easier to do on the A1, so maintenance is definitely on the A series side. This touchscreen is like an old MP3 player from back in the day, essentially. It's not bad if this is the first time you're just interfacing with a 3D printer. It definitely works, more functional, but compared to a touchscreen, I mean, ease of, quality of life, that definitely goes to the A series. Another thing that's super annoying about the P1S specifically is the fact that with their nozzles are automatically attached to a fan. So whenever you want to change the nozzle, as you can see, the tool head's a bit more complicated for the P1S, but that's needed to, give it some cooling that it needs. So you need an Allen key or screwdriver to remove it just in order to change your nozzle. And the thing is, with 3D printers, your nozzles will occasionally, get clogged. It's just part of 3D printing, especially if you use more exotic materials. These things are going to be so annoying to remove compared to, let's say, the A1. But if you go to the A1 here, all you have to do is just take off this cover here. There, I can just cut the filament if I want to. Here is my nozzle here. And once that's done, guess what? You can literally just unhook it like this. Just make sure everything's okay. The way it's just hugged here, like this. see if there's any issues with this, right? It's really simple design. It's magnetic, right? And then all you have to do is just, well, look, there we go. Okay, just plug it back in, hook it there, close it there. Look at that, that's on. And then all you need to do is just put this sock on, okay? And then you put this cover back on. You just snap it into place. Look how much easier that is compared to this thing. So that is something that not a lot of people tell you when they recommend the P1S. To me, I found that to be quite a bit more of a faff, and that's why, because when I do PLA printing, and if I don't need a massive object, to be honest, I will always go to the A series just because they're so much easier to use and maintain and swap out the nozzles. And that's as someone. This is as someone who has an AMS on both of them and actually has them side by side. If I don't need something big, I'm printing it on this one. It's just so much easier to maintain, and that is just the truth of it. I don't have a P2S here, but I am going to talk about it because I've seen the videos online. P2S is a very similar build, right? Probably identical to this. It's just the next generation of it. The best things that they've done with it, and this, I think this printer is around £650. They've priced it very competitively as, like, you know, the old price of the P1S when it first came out, which is a very fair price, £650. This, I'd still spend £650 on this printer alone today if I had to, but now it's even better. So this this screen is now fully replaced with a touchscreen, right? Like the A series. Absolutely amazing. Good quality of life increase. Yeah, nothing more to say on that. The best thing about it that they've done, though, in my opinion, is they've actually upgraded the nozzle system. So it's like the A series. So when you want to quickly change the nozzle, you don't have to, take it out from the fan or buy the more expensive fan. It's a very quick nozzle system like the A series where you can just quickly, take out the nozzle and put one in. So that nozzle system has upgraded it and it's just made it so much better. Really recommend getting a P2S if you can afford it. If you are thinking about, doing it, you need a CoreXY printer, you're a bit more invested in 3D printing, and you're deciding between a P1S and P2S, I personally bite the bullet and go for a P2S. I think they've also upgraded the camera as well and give it some AI detection. So if there's anything wrong with your first layer prints, Bambu Lab system, I think it's a Bambu Handy or the Bambu software, it will tell you that something's wrong with your first layer. So that's also something to have. Okay, so we're back on the PC, and the reason for this is because I'm actually going to be showing you the H2S, the H2D, and the H2C, which isn't out yet, but I'll show you a sneaky link that you can see just to find some more information about it, because it should be coming out soon. So just going to say this right up front, I actually wouldn't recommend these printers for a beginner. Why? Because they're all actually quite expensive. I think they're like around £1,000 minimum. These are definitely the highest printers that Bambu have. So I mean, there's going to be quite a steep investment, especially for a beginner. So I would recommend trying one of the cheaper models out first, seeing if you're into 3D printing, hoping it doesn't become an expensive paperweight. And if you are, then you can spend some money on this 3D printer, the more luxurious ones. But if not, and you want to go straight for it, fair enough. I am only going to cover these shortly because it is a beginner video. So the H2S with the AMS Pro combo is actually starting off at basically £1,200. That is a bit expensive because the H2D is a bit cheaper, which I will show you in a bit. But essentially this printer has the biggest print volume you can get. It's 34 by 320 by 34 millimeters and centimeters. That is enormous. You're basically going to be getting this printer if you want to print something because the standard P2S size isn't that big. This 3D printer, I believe it does actually print a little bit faster from what they're advertising. You do have the option to get a laser cut module as well. Personally, I'm not going to talk about that. You can watch another YouTuber's review on it. Why? Because I have no experience on it. I have no experience using them in general, let alone on this printer. Anything I'd say will just be invalidated basically. But the main thing here is that this is probably one of the best 3D printers that you can get, and the thing is that it can actually print even more exotic materials, right? So I think it can actually print engineering grade filament. So if I go down here, you can see it's got AI detection. They've advertised that it's an enormous large volume, prints up to 30% faster speed. I'm not sure against what, but the AMS Pro or the AMS2 that they have actually has filament drying as well. How I mentioned before that the filament in the AMS Lite is actually exposed, so it can get moisture in it. The AMS Pro actually protects the filament from getting moisture in it because it's enclosed. This one means that if your filament does have moisture within it, it can actually dry it within itself. So that's a very useful feature. That is also why it costs a bit more. But as you can see, they're actually advertising this more as a personal manufacturing hub, so it's got the laser engraved as well into it, right?
Another thing that they've got, this is on the Black Friday sale. So keep in mind that the H2S was, I think, £1,200. The H2D is £1,400. And this one is a dual nozzle printer, right? So it's almost like A2S. It's just the fact that this one has two nozzles, so you can end up printing two different colors almost simultaneously. I think it still does need to purge a little bit, but nowhere near like the normal purge system that it has to go through. The main reason you'd like to do this is if you use a lot of multicolor 3D printing, if you can justify spending £1,400 for that, or if you're doing more professional projects and you want to use something, let's say one nozzle for support and another nozzle for your actual print material. It's the same thing like the H2S, where you can have the laser engraver in it as well. You can choose the different laser strength as well. I believe I didn't even know that you can actually choose the strengths. It's actually ended up being quite impressive. And the very last one that I can recommend, or not even recommend, the last one that I'm personally waiting for to see is the H2C, right? So this is something that Bambu's going to try and release by the end of the year. So I think they've got like literally 50 days left, if that. But it's essentially their system that's going to allow them to reduce this little purge issue that they've got going. So they've said that it's their first attempt at it. I'm going to skip this video. I'm going to link it down below just so you guys can read about it. But it's essentially their way of allowing you to print multiple colors at once by swapping the nozzles, right? So it's called the vortex system. As you can see here, it swaps the nozzle, and over here it allows you to print loads of different colors, right? So they've done a really good job on this video. I'm going to link it down below as well. But essentially their system allows you, this is the main part, you can swap the nozzle for whatever color you want it to be, and then you're allowed to print like, I don't know, up to 4 different colors and almost simultaneously. To be honest, I have no idea how it's going to be. It's not out yet. This is just a teaser video. They're showing how it's going to work. I have no idea how much it will cost. I'm assuming it won't be part of the Black Friday sale. They're trying to get rid of their other printers for now, and then they're going to sell it at like a very high-end price. If I was to guess, I'm going to say around £2,000 for everything included. That's what I'm expecting. I'm just guessing here. But I just want to keep you guys involved with what's going on in the community. So I actually forgot to mention this when I was recording, but in this video, I'm going to be talking exclusively about Bambu Lab 3D printers, right? The whole reason for this is because this is my experience with them, as in I only have Bambu Lab products. It's the only opinion I can give that I actually trust and I'm actually comfortable putting out there. But to be honest, when I did do my research about getting a 3D printer, to me, it was a very clear winner to get a Bambu Lab 3D printer if it's one of your first ones. The reason for this is because they just work straight out of the box. You're not going to be one of those people who are tinkering the perfect settings for your 3D printer. This is literally plug and play. They advertise it within 15 minutes, but probably realistically within 30 minutes, by the time you unbox your 3D printer, you are going to be printing your first thing and it's going to come out basically flawlessly, right? All their 3D printers, including their cheapest one at £140, has a camera built in. I'm not sure if this is industry standard, but to me that is absolutely amazing. And they have an app on their PC, but also on your phone. So that means even when you're away from your PC, you're at work or something, you can actually monitor your 3D printer and see what it's doing. You can see how much percentage is left on the print. You can see the actual live footage of it printing. You can record time lapses on it. They also have a really great ecosystem for their models, right? It's called MakerWorld. I believe even if you have another brand of a 3D printer, you can access this, but it just integrates so nicely within their own ecosystem. That's why it's just so easy for beginners, and that's why I'm recommending Bambu Labs for beginners as well, purely based off my experience. Please let me know what other printers you recommend in the comments below. I can only be biased based on my own experience. And with all that being said, let's get back into it.
And another reason why I made this video, I think it's quite a hot topic, is that quite a lot of people get a 3D printer with the intention to sell stuff online, right, and start as a side hustle. I am no exception to that. In terms of when I first got the 3D printer, I was using it for personal use, but then I was like, hey, let me try sell stuff online. And luckily it worked out. However, one thing to note, and I'm going to stand by on this till the day I die, you do not need to get the most expensive 3D printer in order to start this as a hobby and in order to sell stuff online, right? You might think that if you've got the best 3D printer here, it makes you more cost efficient for stuff. You're going to be able to sell stuff online at a better margin. It just makes you more competitive. That is just so wrong. I am telling you now from experience. I use this printer, this A1 Mini here, without the AMS, even though I did have it. I wasn't doing anything multicolor printing. This machine ran my Etsy store for about a month during busy times at Christmas, okay? It was only until when I couldn't meet up with the demand because of just one small build plate that I decided to expand. Even 2 3D printers didn't help me there, so I had to get even more. It's such a blessed problem to have, but it's just proof that you don't need to actually, buy the most expensive machine in order to run an online shop with it. Start small. If you're thinking about running a business, it's very different to just running a manufacturing line. Okay, I'm going to put more videos on this in the future, so definitely stay subscribed for that. But save your money. When you have a 3D printer like this and it's only £120, guess what? You have more money for different filaments. You have more money for ads online that can definitely help your shop. I learned that as well. There's a lot more to running a business than it is just having the best 3D printer, okay? You need to look at the products you want. You also need to look at how you can save money and where else you can spend it, okay? So that's just something I'm going to put out there in case this is something that's going to make you choose a different printer, okay? That's why I'm saying go small. If you want, start with something smaller. Then when it works out successful, then you upgrade like I have. Okay, it literally went 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I got the shelf. This setup took like a year to get, and I'm super happy with it. Okay, it's something that's happened slowly over time. To be honest, you can't really pick a wrong one. Whichever one you get of these, they are so reasonably priced. You are going to end up enjoying it. And that was it for this video, guys. I hope you guys ended up enjoying it. If you did find it helpful, I'd appreciate a like. And also, if you did end up purchasing a Bambu Lab printer or a non-Bambu Lab printer, let me know which one you got down below in the comments. I'm genuinely curious to see if you agree with my opinions or not. Again, this is just purely based on my experience, but I did start out small and end up expanding slowly. And I was constrained on a budget. And I do know the difference between, having something that just works and is small, for an office versus having something that you might need to actually produce something for an Etsy store, right? Um, this is a new channel, so if you sticked around this long, I do truly appreciate it. Thank you so much. I am actually going to be making my next video on my Etsy 3D printing success and all those tips and tricks I have for others because, like I said, I don't do this for full time, but I do actually supplement it with side income. And I have picked up some tips and tricks along the way, some stuff I want to share with you guys and also learn from you guys in the comment, right? 3D printing space is like a very exciting community and, I'm glad I'm in it. And yeah, that's it. Take care, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Bye.